Reborn as the most worthless street loafer of the 1980s, my eldest sister fought with my brother-in-law just to keep me fed, and my nephew cried from hunger. With 70 cents in my pocket, I rushed into the blizzard and squatted on the mountain for 3 days and 3 nights with a pig bladder. On the 4th day, I slammed 4 wild rats, fat as pigs, onto the stove. Sis, stew them. When that bowl of hot and sour field rat was served, my sister cried. I knew then that this life was going to be secure. In the 12th lunar month of 1983, the snow in the greater Xiang Mountains went completely wild. Snow more than half a meter deep piled up under the windows, and at night the glare off the snow kept people from sleeping soundly. I stood in the yard, loosened the waistband of my padded pants to go to the toilet, and still couldn't figure out where the squat pit was. The shed over this lousy dry latrine had been crushed by the snow. If I stepped into empty air and fell into the cesspit, that would really be a golden bath. I remember in my previous life, my eldest nephew fell in just like that and got called a dung beetle for the rest of his life. Later, even his dating prospects fell through. I can't let him suffer that again in this life. I took a shovel and cleared the snow around the outhouse before finally squatting down at ease. The greater Xiang Mountains in the 1980s were truly beautiful, more spectacular than any later internet-famous snowy scenery, just a bit hard on the butt from the cold. As for this rebirth business, even I'm confused. In my previous life, I was already over 70. Had just found myself an old companion and was ready to enjoy my twilight years, but after one sleep, I woke up back in 1983, only 18 years old. That was the year I had just been fired from the state-owned factory. The reason was simple. I beat up the workshop director. I was young and hot-blooded and couldn't stand that look on his face. One punch felt satisfying, and losing my job was just as swift. Old Xiang was so furious he wanted to sever our father-son relationship, and it was only my eldest sister, Xiang Qianjin, who took me in. But in those days no family was well off. My sister earned work points in the production team, and my brother-in-law, Tian Weidong, was a carpenter. There was also my 6-year-old eldest nephew, Tian Hua, at home. The whole family scraped together money just to make it through the winter. A growing boy can eat his father into poverty. All I had left in my pocket was a bit over 10 yuan from last month's wages. Forget helping out my sister. Even not starving myself to death would be a blessing. Since I got to live this life over again, no matter what, I couldn't let myself suffer through the same hardship as before. I was squatting over the latrine, thinking about how to make money, when I heard my sister and brother-in-law talking in the west room. The soundproofing in this earthen house was terrible. Every little sound came through clearly. Tian, what exactly are you trying to do? So what if my little brother stays at our place for a couple of days? He's been kicked out of the state-owned factory now. How can I, as his sister, just watch him freeze and go hungry? My sister's voice was anxious and sharp. My brother-in-law kept his voice low. Look at you. I didn't say anything, did I? But Mayun, the coal we have for the new year is only just enough for the 3 of us. Aren't I trying to think of a way too? If there's not enough coal, the 2 of us can just make do a little. It's not like we'll freeze to death. If not, let Tianhua sleep in his uncle's room. Worst case, I'll go to the production team and ask to buy next year's coal on credit. If you can't bring yourself to do it, I will. Mom, I don't want to stay with Uncle. Uncle always bullies me. Mom, I'm hungry, I want to eat meat. Just as Tianhua's voice sounded, there came a bang. And my sister pushed the door open and walked out, splashing a basin of water onto the ground. My brother-in-law chased after her and happened to come face to face with me. His face was full of embarrassment. My sister also realized something was wrong, turned and shot my brother-in-law a fierce glare, then stepped forward and grabbed my hand. Little brother, don't take it to heart. Your brother-in-law wasn't talking behind your back. My home is your home. Just stay here without worry. I'll figure out the coal. As long as your sister has a mouthful of hot food to eat, so will you. My heart warmed. In my previous life, I freeloaded at my eldest sister's home for a full 3 years, only leaving later when I went with some people to the coast to do business. How was I so shamelessly at ease back then? Sis, wait a second. I went into the room, dug out a small cloth bundle, counted the money inside, and stuffed it into her hand. Sis, when I was fired I didn't save any money, just 1 month's wages left. 16 yuan 7 mao and a few grain coupons. I'm keeping the 7 mao, you take the 16 yuan. I just heard there's not enough coal at home. In this bitter winter cold, people could freeze to death. Hurry and go buy coal. My eldest sister got anxious and tried to stuff the money back. What do you need to give money for? How can a grown young man of nearly 20 get by without a couple of coins in his pocket? My brother-in-law also got anxious. Take it, I didn't mean it that way. He was originally a carpenter by trade, a craftsman who was clumsy with words. and when he got flustered, his face turned red. I didn't reach out to take it. Sis, keep the money. I was immature before, but I won't be anymore. If you insist on treating me like an outsider, I'll move out right away. The moment I said that, my eldest sister stopped pushing it back. Heavy snow had sealed off the mountain, and the nearest town was 10 li away. Even if I wanted to go back, I couldn't. My brother-in-law looked at me in surprise. He probably couldn't figure out how this brother-in-law of his had suddenly changed so much. Meanwhile, Tianhua beside us blinked his eyes, practically drooling. Mom, Uncle gave us money, so can we eat meat today? My eldest sister grabbed my brother-in-law by the ear. Look at you, talking nonsense. See that? Is my little brother the kind of person who doesn't know better? Then she turned and shouted at Tianhua. Eat, eat, eat. All you ever think about is eating. I threw on my padded coat and went out. The old Tian family wasn't short on grain. There was always enough sorghum rice and cornmeal to fill us up. But as for meat, the last time we had any was half a month ago. Tianhua ran after me, his little face red from the cold. Uncle, little uncle, slow down. Why did you come? He gave me a silly grin and handed over a pair of cotton gloves. My mom saw you weren't wearing much and was afraid you'd freeze, so she had me bring you these padded gloves. I smiled and flicked the tip of his red, cold nose. After putting on the gloves, I really did feel a lot warmer. Tianhua craving meat? The little guy first nodded hard, then shook his head hard. Little uncle, I don't. When he said that, drool was already hanging from his chin. I knew this child was truly lacking in nourishment. Not just him. Even I started craving it the moment I thought of the taste of meat. Before the 12th month, the old Tian family had slaughtered a pig, but it had been raised for the production team, so my eldest sister only got a few strips of pork, frozen in the snowbank. With one more mouth to feed because of me. My eldest sister gritted her teeth and cut away half of it to help cover the household expenses, and she only dared save the little that remained for the new year. The whole family had gone so long without meat that their mouths tasted bland as could be. Where was I supposed to get meat? I thought it over, and my eyes lit up as an idea immediately came to mind. In my previous life, I'd done plenty of this sort of sneaky improving the menu business. Tianhua, go back inside first. Uncle's going to get you some meat. Really? Really? If you're lying, you're a puppy? If I'm lying, I'm a puppy. Uncle Pinky swears with you. I crouched down and hooked pinkies with him, even chanting, Pinky swear, hang ourselves, 100 years no changing 3 times. And only then did the kid believe me about 70%. He wanted to come along, but I didn't let him. The snow still hadn't stopped, and wandering around in this icy weather with a little kid, if he caught a chill and got sick, that'd be trouble. I myself wasn't afraid. At 17 or 18, I was a sturdy young man, like I had a stove tucked inside me. In my previous life, I braved wind and rain and stubbornly never got much of any illness. After settling Tianhua and sending him off, I tramped through the snow around the village. Buying meat would be the fastest way, but impossible. I only had 7 mao in my pocket. At the supply and marketing cooperative, I could probably buy a jean, but meat coupons were in short supply. And I'd just put on airs and given all the coupons to my eldest sister. The mountains had the most wild game. Although it wasn't time for ice fishing yet, as long as I was willing to put in the effort, I could always manage to get something good to eat. As I walked, a whiff of blood drifted into my nose. At the east end of the village was old Lu's house. The head of the household was Lu Guangji, the butcher of Hejiang village, and he was on pretty good terms with my elder sister's husband. One sniff of that smell was enough to tell they had just slaughtered livestock at his place. I was peeking around when the door curtain was lifted. A bearded man in a military coat, carrying a basin, walked out. Isn't this the little brother-in-law from Carpenter Tian's family? What are you doing standing outside? It's pitch dark. Aren't you afraid of freezing? Lu Guangji had a pretty loud voice, and with a raise of his hand, he was about to dump the scraps in the basin. Uncle Lu, it's me. I grinned. I thought it looked like you. At this hour, why aren't you staying inside instead of running around outside? It's pretty cold today. He pulled his military coat tighter around himself, opened the gate, and beckoned me into the yard. I waved my hand and declined. Just wandering around a bit, can't stay cooped up indoors. Lu Guangji didn't think much of it, assuming I was from the city and not used to living in the countryside. It had been a dozen days since the first snow in the greater Xing'an range fell, and the temperature had plunged. After nightfall, the wind cut like knives, so there really wasn't much worth strolling around for. My gaze fell on the basin in his hands. Uncle, are you throwing out pig bladders? Can you sell them to me? Lu Guangji froze for a moment. They are pig bladders, but those things reek. What do you want them for? You can't eat them anyway. Pig bladders really were the sort of thing nobody liked, not even butchers. If they weren't handled properly, The rank smell made them impossible to eat. I chuckled. Well, I promised my eldest nephew I'd make him something fun. If you blow up these pig bladders, they're just right for him to kick around. Uncle, if it's convenient, give them to me and I'll pay for them. What entertainment was there in the countryside in the early 1980s? In the huge Hejiang village, with its 300 or 400 people, the only thing that could be called an electrical appliance was the ancient radio at the production team leader's house. Getting electricity was something for next year. Spring and summer were fine. Adults gathered together to chat idly. Kids played rubber band jumping. But in the dead of winter, even the livestock stopped showing themselves, and there really was nothing to play with. Listen to you. Why would this thing cost any money? No need to be so formal. How many do you want? Without another word, Lu Guangji casually fished out several pig bladders, tied them together with hemp rope, and handed them over. I hurriedly took out money, but he refused no matter what. After the two of us pushed it back and forth for quite a while, I could only give up. Oh right, don't go any farther ahead. The first snow just fell, and the ice still hasn't frozen solid. If you fall in, that'll be trouble. If there's nothing else, head back early. Tell your brother-in-law that I'll come find him later to make a couple of things for me. As I was leaving, Lu Guangji didn't forget to give me a few words of warning. I quickly thanked him. He was right. Stepping onto ice before it had frozen firm was like walking onto a man-eating pit. But I hadn't asked for those pig bladders to blow them up for Tianhua to play with. Carrying those stinking things, I went back home once. I didn't go inside. Instead, I felt around behind the gate and pulled out a long hemp rope. Then I followed the path for half an hour and arrived at a patch of wasteland not too far from the village, where the village lights could still be seen faintly. I squatted on the ground, rubbed the pig bladders in a snowdrift a few times to rinse them off casually, and only nodded in satisfaction once the rank smell wasn't quite so strong. That smell was exactly what I wanted. I made the hemp rope into several sections and fashioned 6 or 7 noose loops. I left a slip knot in the middle, passed the thick end through the middle, and then tied on a pig bladder. A simple trap was finished. Then I set a snare at each burrow entrance. This place was called Tianbian Tudong, and I had come here to catch Di Chuzi. Di Chuzi are field mice, but the breed around here is fairly large, almost the size of wild rabbits, and they also have the habit of wintering in hibernation. These things are especially fond of pungent rank smells, and in my previous life I had heard of people catching quite a few with this method. Now it all depended on whether it would work. By the time I had set all 7 snares, dusk had already fallen. I originally wanted to squat there and wait for a while. Maybe one of the dumb ones would just happen to run right into it. But it was simply too cold to endure. It was fine while I was moving around setting the snares, and I had built up a bit of warmth. But after stopping for only a moment, the cold wind blew through and I was chilled to the bone. The military coat felt like it was made of paper, the wind drilling straight into my bones. I had no choice but to give up waiting there and head back with my neck hunched. By the time I got back to my eldest sister's house, the kerosene lamp in the west room had already gone out. The oil lamp in the main hall was still lit, its dim yellow flames swaying in the darkness. There was no clock, so I didn't know exactly what time it was. I crawled into the quilt and quickly fell asleep. Before daybreak the next morning, I got up. From the west room came the rustling sounds of getting dressed. My eldest sister and brother-in-law were getting ready. I threw on my military coat and headed out. I had to hurry and check the snares. Although the snow hadn't fallen very deeply yesterday, this was still near the village. And if someone beat me to it, all my work would be for nothing. As I trudged through the snow to the first place where I'd set a snare, my heart skipped a beat. The snare had vanished without a trace, and even the pig bladder tied in the middle was gone. Had someone really picked it up? I quickly moved closer to take a look, then let out a sigh of relief. There were only groundhog footprints around the mouth of the hole, no human ones. Looks like that fellow had dragged the pig bladder into the hole. Without hesitating, I turned and ran toward the second place where I'd set a snare. From far off, I saw a patch of yellow toppled crookedly in the snow, its body frozen stiff. A plump groundhog was caught with its head tilted in the snare, completely motionless. This trip wasn't for nothing. I was overjoyed and quickly undid the snare, hefting it in my hand. It had to weigh at least 5 or 6 jin. Heavy and solid. The third hole, another one. The fourth, another one. After making a round of all 7 hole entrances, I had 4 groundhogs hanging from my waist, adding up to at least 20 or 30 jin. The other 3 holes were pretty much like the first one. The pig bladders had been carried off, but nothing was caught. Even so, this haul had far exceeded my expectations. If you have to blame something, blame the fact that the wild game in those days was far too unwary. In later years, let alone luring them with a rank-smelling pig bladder, Even if you put out fresh meat and specially made feed, it would still depend on the mood of these lordly groundhogs. I put away the unused snares, strung the 4 groundhogs together with hemp rope, and hung them at my waist as I hummed a little tune on the way home. But just as I reached the main gate, I ran straight into my brother-in-law, who was heading out. He froze, his eyes fixed on my waist, nearly popping out of his head. "Dad! Groundhogs! Dad!" Tianhua, clinging to the windowsill of the west room, saw them and screamed with delight. In just a few seconds, the kid dashed out, not even having fastened the buttons on his cotton jacket, and came charging straight at me. My eldest sister chased after him from behind, cursing under her breath. When she saw the 4 dead groundhogs hanging from my waist, she was stunned too. "Brother, where did you get those?" Shivering, I grinned and said, "Better let me get inside and explain. I'm wearing too little." After just that short while, I was almost frozen through. Once inside, warmth rushed over me. I untied the hemp rope from my waist, and the 4 groundhogs hit the floor with a heavy thud. Didn't Tianhua say yesterday that he wanted to eat meat? I figured I'd try my luck last night and set a few rabbit snares. Who knew that when I went to check this morning, I hadn't caught any rabbits. Instead, I'd hit the jackpot with a groundhog den. My eldest sister and brother-in-law exchanged a glance, and the same words were written in their eyes. Qianjin went out to catch groundhogs last night? Then my eldest sister immediately felt distressed and came over to grab my arm. "How can you be so thoughtless? The kid wants meat, so you went to catch groundhogs. What if you got frostbitten or something worse? How am I supposed to explain that to Mom and Dad?" Her tone was fierce, but her hands were rubbing my arms hard to warm them up. Tianhua squatted on the ground, fiddling with those few completely dead groundhogs. After a night of wind and snow, they were all frozen stiff, and they had died a pretty miserable death. But the boy wasn't scared at all. He was practically drooling. "Mom, I want to eat groundhog. This stuff is really delicious. I heard Fathead talk about it." "Eat, eat, eat. You only ever think about eating." Big Sis raised her hand to scold her son. "Can't you see how frozen your little uncle is? You don't know what's good for you at all. And you too. You went to all this trouble just to satisfy the kid's cravings. You really spoil him." I reached out to stop her. "That's enough, sis. The kid's craving it, and I'm craving it too." Even if Tianhua hadn't said anything, I was planning to give it some thought myself. I can't just freeload at your place and wait around to die like a parasite. Just think of it as your little brother wanting to eat it. That's all. I bent down, picked up a groundhog, and weighed it in my hand. This thing is easy enough to prepare too. You can roast it over the fire or stir-fry it directly. It just doesn't have much fat. This thing is about the same as rabbit. It looks plump, but it's actually all lean meat. People later on would even specifically go for this kind of thing when trying to lose weight. Only after hearing that did Big Sis stop objecting. Tianhua was instantly overjoyed and wanted to come help. Normally, Big Sis would definitely have barked at him. What help can a 6-year-old possibly be? It'd be a blessing if he didn't just make more trouble. But I didn't stop him and let him give me a hand. Groundhogs aren't hard to deal with. Scald them with boiling water, peel off the skin, then dig out all the internal organs, those colorful intestines, and the like. And that's it. While I was working, I deliberately added, "Sis, don't throw away the intestines or anything. I'll have a use for them later." Big Sis froze for a moment, probably unable to figure out what use that stuff could be. It's not like pig offal. But once I said it, she still nodded and put them away. I smiled faintly. Groundhog innards are good stuff. Once the ice freezes thick enough, they're top-grade bait for ice fishing. Big Sis heated up the iron pot and scraped a little animal fat out of the grease jar to melt. The groundhog meat was cut into small pieces and tossed into the pot. With a loud sizzle, the aroma of meat instantly spread through the whole room. Standing on tiptoe, Tianhua clung to the edge of the stove, sniffing hard, his eyes shining like light bulbs. Brother-in-law couldn't sit still either. Pretending to come over for some water, he craned his neck to peek into the pot. The pickled cabbage had already been prepared earlier. She fished it out of the crock, sliced it into shreds, and stewed it together with the meat. Right before it was done, Big Sis tossed in a few dried chili peppers, bright red and appetizing to look at. Before long, a plate of hot and sour field mouse was on the table. After half a month without the taste of meat, it made people ache with craving. This time luck was good. We got quite a few to choosy in one night. Not many people eat this stuff. If supplies weren't scarce to a certain point, who would think of getting this as a last resort? But no matter how small the fly, it's still meat. At least it counts as something meaty. A bite of coarse-grained corn pancake, its brown edges crisp and fragrant, and a mouthful of freshly cooked stew rich with the smell of meat. The vegetables had soaked up a little grease too, so they weren't bad to eat. The family of four sat around the table, mouths busy and hands busy. They hadn't eaten this well in quite a few days. Tianhua, hurry up and thank your uncle. If it weren't for him, you wouldn't be eating this meat stew. Xiang Qianjin reminded him. Tianhua was eating so happily that he had no time to properly say thank you. He just made a muffled sound with his mouth full, which counted as thanks. Xiang Qianjin let out an ah, fully aware that her younger brother had put a lot of thought into this meal. She picked out 2 extra pieces of meat for him to help replenish the strength he'd used up. Sis, you eat too. There's plenty, don't be stingy. This didn't even cost anything. In the end, even the bit of oil left at the bottom of the serving plate was licked clean by Tianhua. At first glance, you'd think nothing had ever been on the plate. After eating and drinking their fill, they flopped down on the calm. No matter how heavily the snow was falling outside, it was always warm inside the house. Tian Weidong hadn't forgotten what his wife had asked him to do. After resting for a bit, he put on that army green overcoat, put on his fur hat, and didn't forget to wear those thick cotton-padded shoes too. Seeing this, Xiang Qianjin hurriedly stood up and asked his brother-in-law what he was going out for, saying it was so cold outside. With snow pits everywhere, one misstep could send you falling, and if you're unlucky, something bad could happen. Tian Weidong said with a smile. Your sister told me to buy some coal. How could we get through winter without burning coal? Once he had himself bundled up, Tian Weidong took a flour sack and went out. Xiang Qianjin thought about it. 10 yuan could buy quite a lot of coal. It wouldn't look right to let his brother-in-law go alone without anyone to lend a hand. He shouted through the window covered with a layer of transparent plastic sheeting. Brother-in-law, I'll go with you. The commune was far away, and the snow was deep. Every step had to be carefully judged in your mind so you wouldn't step into empty space. One tumble, and you could end up buried in the snow. Brother-in-law, I was always in the wrong before, making you all worry about me day and night. From now on, I'll definitely work seriously to change my old bad habits. And I'll do my part to improve the family situation too. Tian Weidong's impression of Xiang Qianjin wasn't exactly good, but it wasn't bad either. He had been young once too. Though he hadn't been as prickly as Xiang Qianjin, he understood in his heart. Always simple and honest by nature, Tian Weidong heard Xiang Qianjin speak so sincerely from the heart, and a long unseen smile appeared on his face. The two of them walked side by side through the snow, shrinking their faces into their collars as much as possible. That way they could reduce contact with the cold outside air, leaving only their eyes exposed to watch the road. When they reached the commune, they found quite a few people there buying things. Tian Weidong felt in his pocket, took out the 10 yuan bill, and couldn't help sighing. In those days, supplies were scarce, and even the money you earned felt tight when used for daily living. Every yuan had to be stretched as if it were two, and everything had to be used as fully as possible. If his pockets had been bulging with money, he would have wanted to get himself a new cotton-padded overcoat too. The one he was wearing had been bought when he married Xiang Meiyun, and that had been so many years ago. The cotton inside had all hardened into lumps, and most of its warmth-retaining function was psychological at this point. When he came to the counter, Tian Weidong slapped the 10 yuan bill down on the glass display case. Give me 10 yuan's worth of coal. No broken bits. Give me whole chunks. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 40s. She picked up the money, held it up in midair, examined it carefully, and felt it with her fingers. Then she told someone to go load the coal. Xiang Qianjin still had a few jiao left in his own hand. It was rare for him to come to the commune, and going back empty-handed would make this freezing trip feel wasted. The commune's goods were fairly complete, but 0.7 yuan really couldn't buy much. Sis, how much is this candy? The woman glanced at the candy displayed in the glass case, wrapped in colorful candy paper. This candy is imported from abroad. It's awfully expensive. Better let me get you some white rock sugar instead. The taste is about the same. Xiang Qianjin felt embarrassed. Wasn't imported candy sweet too? Why should it cost so much more? Thinking back to his 21st century self, material goods had already become abundant, and communes had long since been abolished. Things like sugar were bought only during the New Year or holidays. Who ate that in ordinary times? Seeing his brother-in-law over there loading coal, Xiang Qianjin took out a few jiao and bought a small bag of rock sugar, stuffing it into his pocket. There was quite a lot of coal for 10 yuan, and the commune never cheated customers on weight when selling things. That sack of coal was quite heavy when lifted. One person carried the front on his shoulder, while the other dragged the bottom from behind. Thinking about how far they still had to walk back, Xiang Qianjin wanted to see if anyone had come by bike. Maybe someone could give them a ride for part of the way, but standing at the entrance of the commune, he looked left and right. There wasn't a single 28-inch roadster bicycle in sight. Tian Weidong was thinking about home. Every time Xiang Meiyan sent him out to buy things, it meant the family stockpile was almost used up. And looking at today's weather, the sky was so overcast it seemed ready to drip water. Tian Weidong knew very well that his wife and child at home were all waiting for him to bring the coal back. Qianjin, let's hurry. Otherwise, we won't even make it home before dark. Xiang Qianjin nodded, and the two of them took turns carrying that sack of coal on their backs as they headed home. The greater Xing'an range was so far north that it got dark early. Before you knew it, the sun had already set. Once it got completely dark, they wouldn't dare walk this road anymore. One slip of the foot and a fall backward, and who knew where you'd go rolling off to? As if they were of one mind, both of them unconsciously quickened their pace, wanting to get home before sunset. But when you walk fast, your footing becomes less steady. And several times Xiang Qianjin felt hard stones under his feet, digging painfully into the soles. Walking in front, Tian Weidong was like a clay bodhisattva, feeling his way across the river. Brother-in-law, in a bit Before Xiang Qianjin could finish what he was about to say, Tian Weidong, who was walking ahead of him, suddenly slipped and went down flat on his back. He fell sprawled in the snow, and Xiang Qianjin quickly threw aside the coal sack in his hand and went to pull up the fallen Tian Weidong. Tian Weidong was also startled, and before he could grab Xiang Qianjin's hand in his panic, his feet slipped again. He slid down the slope beside the road. Luckily, he was wearing thick clothes, so even though he got bumped and knocked around, it didn't really hurt. As Tian Weidong slid downward, he shouted, "Qianjin, don't mind me. Pick up the fallen coal chunks and pack them back in. We paid good money for those." Xiang Qianjin looked around, and sure enough, a few chunks of coal about half a palm in size had fallen out. But coal was still not as precious as a person's life. Xiang Qianjin casually picked up 2 pieces and stuffed them into his pocket, then waved his arms as he headed down the slope. He also picked up a tree branch along the way. When he got down there, he discovered that his brother-in-law had twisted his ankle. Old folks always said not to go out lightly on snowy days. Once the heavy snow covered everything, there could be anything underneath it, and if you got bumped or hurt, you'd just have to count yourself unlucky. Xiang Qianjin helped Tian Weidong up, draping his arm over his own shoulder. The slope was probably about 30 or 40 degrees. When it wasn't snowing, going up and down it was no problem, as easy as walking on flat ground. But now that it had snowed, climbing back up was a bit difficult, especially since Tian Weidong had twisted his ankle. Walking up was pretty much impossible, so Xiang Qianjin had no choice but to change his strategy. He crouched down and patted his shoulder. "Brother-in-law, I'll carry you up." Tian Weidong froze in place, thinking that ever since he married Xiang Meiyun, this brother-in-law of his had never been very proper. How had he suddenly changed so much? More importantly, he was a full-grown man, healthy, and weighed around 120 or 130 jin. With all the extra clothes he had on, if he climbed onto Xiang Qianjin's back, he'd weigh at least 130 or 140 jin. "It's fine, I just twisted it a little. I can walk. No need to carry me." Xiang Qianjin turned back to look at Tian Weidong. "Brother-in-law, hurry up. If we keep dawdling, it'll be dark. Can you bear to let my sister and Tianhua stay home hungry and freezing? Besides, if we still don't go home after dark, my sister will start worrying about the two of us." Those words struck Tian Weidong right in the heart, and he simply stopped arguing with Xiang Qianjin. Lying on his brother-in-law's back, Tian Weidong felt a bit unsettled. Xiang Qianjin, on the other hand, wasn't thinking that much. Even if the ground beneath his feet were covered in knife tips, he would still carry his brother-in-law back. It's just a small slope. How could it possibly stop him? "Brother-in-law, hold on tight. Don't fall off." Tian Weidong answered, wrapping his arms around the front of Xiang Qianjin's neck, his left and right hands gripping his wrists. Now that one of his feet was already injured, he couldn't cause him any more trouble. Xiang Qianjin used the branch he had just picked up to brace himself against the ground, climbing upward little by little. The small dirt slope that he could usually climb in just a few steps took more than 10 minutes this time before they made it up without incident. As soon as they got up, Tian Weidong struggled to get down from Xiang Qianjin's back, insisting on walking by himself no matter what. But Xiang Qianjin held up his "but" with both hands. "Walk where? Just stay put on my back." As he spoke, Xiang Qianjin also picked up the sack of coal. This bag of coal weighed about as much as an adult, which meant that Xiang Qianjin was carrying at least more than 300 jin at the moment. Naturally, there was no way he could walk back quickly. But throughout the whole trip, Xiang Qianjin didn't complain once. Instead, he even comforted Tian Weidong, saying, "Don't worry, we'll definitely make it home." Xiang Meiyan started preparing dinner before sunset. It was rare that they had eaten some meat at noon, so dinner couldn't be too shabby either. There were still some beans left, and remembering what her younger brother had told her, when cleaning up the little that was left, she also saved the stuff taken out from the belly. Bloody and messy, it was put in a small basin. Xiang Meiyan didn't understand what her younger brother wanted to keep this stuff for. The meal was ready and the sun had already set, yet neither her husband nor her younger brother was back. As time passed bit by bit, Xiang Meiyan grew more and more uneasy. After finally coaxing Tianhua to sleep, she planned to go out and look for them. If the coal at home hadn't already nearly run out, she wouldn't have wanted her husband to go out in weather like this. Tianhua was still young, so Xiang Meiyan didn't dare go too far. She walked out a certain distance and looked a couple of times in the direction back toward the village. It was already almost 8 in the evening, and it had long since gone completely dark, with not a single streetlight around. Xiang Meiyan could only rely on the battery-powered flashlight in her hand for light. Still not seeing her younger brother and her husband return, her heart was like an ant on a hot pan. They had only gone to the commune to buy some coal, so why had they been gone so long without coming back? Worried that Tianhua might wake up and not be able to find her, Xiang Meiyan had no choice but to return home. She kept looking back every few steps, and every time she turned around she hoped to see her younger brother and Tian Weidong. Just as she was about to reach home, she vaguely felt that they should be back by now. Tianhua was already 5 or 6 years old, so even if he woke up, he would probably just stay lying under the covers. Xiang Meiyan had no choice but to steel herself and turn back again. The weather in the greater Xing'an range was cold, and within minutes the chill would seep into your bones. Xiang Meiyan wore only a thin floral cotton-padded jacket, which was no help at all. After walking a bit farther ahead, she vaguely saw a figure slowly moving toward her. At first Xiang Meiyan was a little scared, thinking it couldn't be that some hungry bear from the mountains had come out looking for food. Could it? But it didn't quite seem like that either. Xiang Meiyan shouted twice at the figure. "Qianjin, Weidong, is that you?" Before her words had even finished, the figure stopped in place. Xiang Meiyan felt as if all the blood in her body was rushing to her scalp. Not caring about anything else, she hurried toward them. She almost stumbled and fell herself in the process. When she got closer, she saw that it was her younger brother and her husband. "What happened here? Weidong, what's wrong?" Xiang Meiyan was so anxious that her words came out all jumbled. Seeing his wife, Tian Weidong finally swallowed his heart back down from his throat. "I'm fine. I accidentally slipped and twisted my ankle. Xiang Qian insisted on carrying me. Wouldn't let me walk. Why did you come out? Hurry back inside. It's so cold out here." At this moment, how could Xiang Meiyan still care whether it was cold or not? Her heart ached for her husband's injured foot, and also for her younger brother coming all this way. He had to carry a bag of coal and his brother-in-law on his back. With that small frame of his, it was a miracle he wasn't crushed. With one more person helping, Xiang Qianjin finally had a chance to catch his breath. But he didn't complain about being tired. After they got home, Xiang Meiyan prepared a basin of hot water. Touching Tian Weidong's foot, she found it ice cold, and when she looked again, his twisted ankle was already swollen. Xiang Meiyan was so distressed that tears kept falling. When Xiang Qianjin saw this, he quickly got up and went to the doorway, wrapped a little snow in a towel, and brought it in. "There's definitely bruising. Ice at first to reduce the swelling." After wearing cotton shoes all day, the smell from his feet was easy to imagine. Tian Weidong felt rather embarrassed. "Qianjin, give it to me. I'll do it myself." Xiang Qianjin said with a smile, "We're all family, I don't mind." After applying the cold compress to the swollen area for a while, Tian Weidong felt that the pain had eased somewhat. "Qianjin, your method really works. Just now it hurt so much I couldn't even put it on the ground, and now it's already much better," Xiang Qianjin said. "A cold compress constricts the blood vessels, slows blood flow, and reduces the formation of bruising. But after today, you'll need a hot compress instead to speed up blood circulation." Tian Weidong listened in a haze and couldn't help looking at Xiang Meiyan. Although the two of them didn't speak, Xiang Meiyan understood what Tian Weidong meant. So she asked for him, "Since when do you know so much? Why didn't I know before?" Xiang Qianjin paused for 2 seconds, then said with a smile, "You thought I was out there doing nothing but bragging and drinking with people. I know so many people. Couldn't I have learned something useful from them?" Xiang Qianjin brushed it off just like that. After taking care of his brother-in-law, he finally carried the coal into the room. This bag of coal was enough to burn for quite a while. Xiang Meiyan thought that the two of them must have gotten chilled outside today, so she might as well heat the Kong a little warmer. That way, the two of them would be more comfortable sleeping at night. This was how they got through every bitter winter year after year. Once spring came and the snow melted, things would be better. Before returning to his room, Xiang Qianjin placed the small bag of white rock sugar he had tucked into his padded jacket pocket on the table. Sis, I bought this for Tianhua. When he wakes up, remember to give it to him. Xiang Meiyun exclaimed. You're not even making money yet, and you already know how to spend it. Why buy this candy? You should learn to save a little. You'll need to get married someday too. Xiang Qianjin scratched his hair. In front of his sister, it was better to act a bit simple and guileless. Sis, it's only 20 or 30 cents. Not expensive. By the time I get married, I definitely won't be short of money for one bag of candy. Xiang Meiyun was a genuine rural woman, without any particularly great abilities. Having a job at the factory was already very good for her. These days, earning money isn't easy, and she didn't have other people's smooth and worldly skills. So she could only save money penny by penny. Otherwise, if she feasted as soon as she got paid, how would she get through the rest of the days after that? Tian Weidong looked at Xiang Qianjin and said, You, right now, with no family and no children, all alone as a bachelor, you spend whatever you earn. But once you get married and have children, you won't dare to be so extravagant anymore. Still, let me thank you on Tianhua's behalf. This thank you actually carried a double meaning, but between men, unlike women, there wasn't that much sentimentality. Xiang Qianjin waved his hand. Brother-in-law, it's no big deal. It's getting late, so I'm heading back to sleep too. After coming out of his sister's room, he turned around and saw those things in the small basin on the stove. Xiang Qianjin decided to get up early tomorrow and take a stroll by the riverbank to see if he could find anything new. He was truly exhausted today. Thinking back to his previous life, he hadn't even managed to build an 8-pack. Now that he had a chance to start over, he had to make his body stronger. As soon as he lay down under the covers, the tension in his nerves instantly eased. Before he even had time to imagine his future life, Xiang Qianjin was already snoring. Tian Weidong still wasn't asleep. As soon as he heard his brother-in-law's snores, he couldn't help but laugh. Meiyun, if Qianjin hadn't gone with me this time, I might not have made it back. Xiang Meiyun washed the foot basin. I told you before, my brother isn't a bad person. He's just young and unsettled. Let's see if you dare speak ill of him behind his back next time. Tian Weidong smiled without saying a word. At daybreak the next morning, Xiang Qianjin got up yawning. He didn't hear any movement outside, and besides, he had to get an early start today, not daring to waste even a minute. If the family wanted to eat and drink well, he had to do his part too. After bundling himself up in layer upon layer of clothes, he carried that basin of stuff and left home. When Xiang Meiyun got up and was about to cook some noodles, she suddenly realized her younger brother wasn't home. Where had this kid gone now? Tian Weidong shrugged. His legs are his own. If he wants to go somewhere, how could we stop him? Besides, he's a grown man. He's definitely not going to get lost. Not knowing when her brother would be back, Xiang Meiyun still cooked his portion when making the noodles. Early in the morning, Xiang Qianjin came alone to the riverbank. Only a thin layer of ice had formed on the water's surface, and although it was covered with snow, it simply couldn't bear a person's weight. He could only search along the riverbank for something good. People couldn't eat those bits of offal from the dechuzi, but for other creatures, they were a delicacy. Yesterday he ate what jumped in the grass. Today he'd have something that swam in the water. After walking some distance along the bank, Xiang Qianjin, sharp-eyed as ever, really did find some traces. He crouched down and looked at those few holes about as thick as a little finger. He knew there had to be something good inside. He picked out some of the offal from the basin and placed it there. He just didn't know whether it could lure whatever was inside out. The offal from the dechuzi smelled awful. Presumably once those little things caught the scent, they'd definitely come scurrying out. People could barely get enough to eat, let alone those animals. Since there were some here, there would definitely be more farther ahead. Whenever Xiang Qianjin found similar little holes, he left bait beside them. After waiting for more than half an hour and still seeing no movement, Xiang Qianjin started getting restless. He had only ever heard that bears and snakes hibernated before. Could loaches hibernate too? He waited a while longer in the biting wind, but still didn't see a single loach. Not eating even when there was food, those loaches had to be stupid. Though he muttered like that, Xiang Qianjin still wasn't willing to give up. He thought that the last time he caught dechuzi, he had waited a whole night. Only half an hour had passed this time. It was still early. He had come out this morning without eating and had walked such a long way. Xiang Qianjin's stomach had long been growling. If it were spring, summer, or autumn, without heavy snow, maybe he could still catch a fish in the river and start a fire to roast it. Now, forget fish. He couldn't even drink the northwest wind. Xiang Qianjin steeled himself. In fact, he had made two preparations. Besides using dechuzi offal to lure out the loaches, There was another method: dig 3 feet into the ground. In winter, the river's surface froze over, and the water beneath the ice was cold too. Loaches couldn't withstand such low temperatures. It would surely burrow into the soil to barely make it through the winter. Seeing that it was almost noon, the bean-pounding pestle's innards had already frozen into a lump. Xiang Qianjin decided not to wait any longer and took out the small shovel from the back of his waist. He started digging in the spot with the hole. After 2 shovelfuls, there was still no sign of the loach. Xiang Qianjin kept digging deeper until he saw something moving in the soil, and only then did he stop. To keep the loach from burrowing even deeper, Xiang Qianjin reached in with his bare hands to grab it. As soon as he caught one, he quickly pulled it out and threw it into the basin. Winter loaches are not as lively as summer loaches, so once tossed into the basin, there was no worry about them jumping out. So he kept digging nonstop along the riverbank until he had caught half a basin of loaches. Only then was Xiang Qianjin fully satisfied. This wasn't a time of great famine. After all, it was still fairly easy to find some wild food along the mountains and riverbanks. This small basin of loaches, paired with a piece of old tofu and some homemade soybean paste, could be stewed into a pot so fragrant it would make your nose fall off. Carrying the basin of loaches, he headed home. And before he even stepped through the door, he heard his sister shouting in the yard. "Old Tian, wait a bit and go out to look for Qianjin. What has he been doing all morning? It's almost time for lunch." Xiang Qianjin hurriedly pushed the door open and came in. "Sis, I'm back." Xiang Meiyun was in the yard holding firewood, and when she saw her younger brother return, she quickly walked over. "What have you been doing all morning? I couldn't see a trace of you. Hurry up and come inside to eat." Seeing his sister come out to gather firewood, he knew the meal actually hadn't been made yet, so it seemed he had returned at just the right time. Xiang Qianjin quickly carried the basin of loaches over to his sister. "Sis, can we have stewed loach for lunch?" Xiang Meiyun looked at that small basin of loaches, then looked at her younger brother and understood what he had been doing all morning. For just this little bit, he had let himself freeze in the ice and snow all morning. Should she say he was silly, or just not very smart? Xiang Qianjin wasn't stupid. Of the 2 things his sister said, neither one was calling him smart. "Sis, look, I've already brought them back. Once this stuff dies, it starts to stink. My brother-in-law and I will gut them." "Sis, is there still tofu at home?" Xiang Meiyun nodded. "Yes, but it's all frozen tofu now." Xiang Qianjin wasn't picky. As long as there was something to eat, that was fine. As long as it was his sister's cooking, everything she made was delicious. In those days, not many families had refrigerators, but once winter came, the outdoors in the 3 northeastern provinces became a giant natural refrigerator. Things bought in advance could be tossed straight into a snowdrift, and before long they would freeze solid as a rock. Inside the house, the Kong was burning warm, and the room wasn't cold either. Tian Weidong had twisted his foot and didn't dare move around much, so he leaned against the wall and played with Tianhua. Seeing that Qianjin had returned, he didn't forget to ask where he had gone, saying that with the ice and snow outside, it was better to stay at home. Xiang Qianjin proudly brought the half basin of loaches over to his brother-in-law, like showing off a treasure. "Brother-in-law, take a look, good stuff." "Oh ho, loaches. Boy, you're really something. Hurry up and get on the Kong to warm yourself. In a bit we'll have your sister stew them for us to eat. Yesterday we ate bean-pounding pestle. Today we're eating loach. What kind of family eats this well?" Xiang Qianjin found a pair of scissors and sat down on the Kong with a lift of his backside. Who doesn't know pork tastes good? But there isn't any right now, and the little there is has to be saved and saved, kept for better days before being taken out to eat. Not until the end of this century would every household's material life rise to a higher level. It's just that Tianhua wants to eat meat, and there was no other way, so he found some of this stuff to satisfy the craving. With a small basin of loaches, Xiang Qianjin had them mostly cleaned up in no time. Watching the loaches being slit open and gutted, Tianhua shrank behind Xiang Qianjin in fear, showing only his little head. Xiang Qianjin picked one out from inside and shoved it in front of Tianhua. Tianhua squealed in fright, and Xiang Qianjin burst out laughing. "Hurry up, stop scaring him. He almost wet the bed last night." Xiang Meiyun came in and said. As soon as Xiang Qianjin heard that, he let out an "oh boy, he's already a big kid, and he still wets the bed." Tianhua seemed to know what his uncle was going to do next, so he quickly covered his crotch with both hands, clamped his legs together, and waddled over to his father. Seeing that the loaches had all been cleaned, Xiang Meiyun took them from her younger brother. Things like washing clothes and cooking have, since ancient times, been done better by women. But Xiang Meiyun was an educated woman, And what she talked about most in daily life was gender equality. There was nothing that women absolutely had to do that men couldn't do. If her man hadn't twisted his foot, she would have called Tian Weidong to go outside and help tend the fire. Right now, Tian Weidong's legs and feet weren't in good shape, so she told him to get plenty of rest and not move around. Little brother, hurry and come out with me to tend the fire. Xiang Qianjin huddled on the Kong and said, start a fire? How would I know how? Aren't you afraid I'll set the house on fire? Xiang Meiyun walked over to him and said, what's so hard about that? Just add firewood into the stove. When Tian Weidong heard his wife say that, he struggled to get down from the Kong. I'd better do it. Do what? Just stay in bed. Xiang Qianjin quickly cried out, sis, you're treating people differently. Can't you see your brother-in-law's foot is hurt? If your hip bone were broken too, sis would let you lie still and not move either, Xiang Meiyun said. As they were talking, Xiang Qianjin seemed to suddenly remember something and said to his brother-in-law, brother-in-law, Uncle Guangji told me yesterday that he wants to ask you to make something for him and wanted to know whether you have time. That Tian Weidong knew carpentry was no secret in the village. If any family wanted a stool or a table and chairs made, they couldn't go wrong asking him. Why wouldn't that be fine? Tell him to come by the house and see me later. Tian Weidong agreed readily. Xiang Qianjin came outside, braced the firewood his sister had gathered against his knee and snapped it in two. Then he threw the pieces one by one into the stove, watching his sister bustle about. Xiang Qianjin also felt heartache. How had he been such a bastard in his previous life? Sis, it's so good to have you. Xiang Meiyun was stunned by that one sentence and looked at her younger brother in a daze for quite a while before saying, what bad idea are you cooking up again, you brat? Sis, why do you always think that of me? You feed me and take care of me. I'll definitely repay you in the future. Xiang Qianjin explained. Xiang Meiyun said with a smile, if you don't go around causing trouble for me, that'll count as repaying me. Later I'll ask someone to help find you a more stable job. Remember, don't be so impulsive next time. However, Xiang Qianjin was not thinking that way at all. As someone who had lived through it, he knew very well what opportunities would come in the next few years that would make even pigs fly. He had to get prepared before the opportunities arrived. If he wanted to improve their current life, just relying on field mice and loaches to eat meat for a couple of meals was far from enough. That could only count as an appetizer. Backed by the great place that is the Greater Xing'an Mountains, he had to learn how to make use of the resources in the mountains. This was bound to be a hard road. Because of the limitations of the era, there weren't that many convenient tools. If he wanted to get what he wanted from the mountains, he'd have to rely on his own two hands. As the old saying goes, a horse won't get fat without night grass, and a man won't get rich without windfall wealth. So Xiang Qianjin planned to get himself some windfall wealth. Where would the windfall wealth come from? From the Greater Xing'an Mountains. There were quite a few valuable things in those mountains. As he thought about it, Xiang Qianjin drifted off into a daze, but his hands kept feeding the firewood in. Seeing this, Xiang Meiyun couldn't help nagging. What are you thinking about? Did you even take in what I just said? From now on, you'd better start acting properly. But what Xiang Qianjin said had nothing at all to do with what his sister was advising him. Sis, if you get some rare items, do you think you could sell them for money? Oh, give it a rest. If you had a way to make money, you'd have done it already. Let me tell you, you absolutely must not do sneaky things like stealing or commit illegal crimes. If I find out, I'll make your brother-in-law break your legs. Our Xiang family has never really been well off, but from our ancestors on, we've never produced anyone who breaks the law and commits crimes. And that can't start with your generation either. Seeing how nervous his sister was, Xiang Qianjin clicked his tongue a couple of times. Sis, I think you're overthinking this. Who said anything about breaking the law? Besides, would a normal person do something illegal? Don't you know what your little brother is like? Isn't there going to be a market fair in a couple of days? Xiang Meiyun was stumped by that question from her brother. I think so. The fair is held on every day ending in 1 and 6. But just look at this weather. Who'd be dumb enough to go out and set up a stall? Everyone's staying holed up at home. What? Are you trying to buy something? A faint smile had been on Xiang Qianjin's face from beginning to end. When his own sister asked what he wanted to buy, the smile on his face grew even brighter. Not buying anything. I'm thinking of selling something. The moment Xiang Meiyun heard that, she immediately got nervous. What? Have you set your eyes on something in the house to sell off? Your brother-in-law and I aren't very capable, so we've only managed to put together these few things. Which do you think is worth more, the thermos or the flashlight? Xiang Qianjin laughed heartily and didn't say anything more. It wasn't until the loaches in the pot were ready that he finally got up to lend a hand. Thinking back to the version of himself from later on, going from eating cornmeal to polished rice and white flour. Occasionally, he'd even indulge in a glass of milk and a grilled sausage. How had he felt back then that life was uncomfortable? You really do need to remember past hardships from time to time to appreciate present happiness. Buy some wild vegetables and make a couple of cornmeal buns to eat. Now he was eating all natural, pollution-free cornmeal for all 3 meals a day. And really, after one bite, he'd have to stretch his neck out for 2 li just to swallow it. But this stuff really is more filling than white flour steamed buns. After eating one, you won't feel hungry for several hours. It's just that the texture and taste are far worse. Otherwise, it could have become a mainstream item on the dining table. Standing by the table, Xiang Qianjin saw her younger brother zoning out again and quickly nudged Tian Weidong with her elbow. Look at him. Look at him. This kid has no idea what he's thinking about again. He already pulled something like this just now. Thinking that his brother-in-law had saved his life, Tian Weidong almost wanted to become his diehard fan. In the past, if Xiang Qianjin had said something like that, he would have chimed in with a couple of remarks from the side. But now he didn't. No matter what your brother is thinking about, at least his mind is quick. As long as it's not illegal, just let him think about it. If it weren't for your brother these past 2 days, would our family have been able to eat this? As they were talking, someone suddenly came. Xiang Qianjin looked through the window and saw that it was Su Guangji. The two families had always been on good terms, so Xiang Qianjin hurried out to greet him. Uncle Guangji, what brings you here? Su Guangji said with a smile. Well, since I had some free time today, I wanted your husband to make 2 cabinets for me. Xiang Qianjin didn't know much about carpentry work, but based on what she knew about her man, making a cabinet shouldn't be difficult. As soon as Su Guangji entered the room, he saw the 4 of them eating here. Oh my, looks like I came at a bad time. Only after speaking did he notice Tian Weidong lying on the bed, and he felt like something was off, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. What's going on? At a time like this, why are you still lying on the Kong? When Su Guangji asked, Tian Weidong told him about twisting his foot yesterday. Su Guangji grew concerned as well. You didn't get a doctor to take a look? Can you really manage just handling it yourselves? I was even thinking of having you make 2 cabinets for me to store things in. And I've already prepared the materials for you. Looks like you won't be able to get out of bed for 10 days to half a month. Tian Weidong looked embarrassed. Uncle Guangji, if you're not in a hurry, I'll make it for you after I recover. Su Guangji said vaguely. I'm not in a hurry, so when it's ready, let me know and I'll come pick it up. Su Guangji was just about to leave when the corner of his eye suddenly noticed the loaches stewed in the stainless steel basin. Stewed loaches? Where did they come from? Can you still catch loaches at this time of year? Su Guangji looked at everyone in the room. Tian Weidong had twisted his foot, so it couldn't have been him. Xiang Qianjin was a woman, so she couldn't have gone out in this weather to fuss around either. As for Tianhua, that was even more impossible. What would a little kid that age know? The only one who could have done it was Xiang Qianjin. Xiang Qianjin didn't say a word. Su Guangji could tell too. It was him who caught them. Qianjin, I've got something and want to ask you for a favor. Are you willing? As soon as Xiang Qianjin heard that, he quickly asked, What is it, Uncle Guangji? Su Guangji thought for a moment and said, I may be going into the mountains tomorrow and need an extra hand. Do you want to come along? If we catch anything, we'll split it 50-50. If you don't want the game, we'll take it to the market and sell it, and we'll split the money 50-50 too. What do you think? After hearing this, Xiang Qianjin suddenly felt like the two of them were on the same wavelength. The cornbread in his hand suddenly didn't seem so appetizing anymore. Uncle Guangji, you're willing to take me hunting in the mountains? I should say this up front. I haven't hunted before. If you want me to go into the river and catch fish, that'd be more like it. But hunting in the mountains is too technical. Technical or not, just tell me whether you're willing to go or not, Su Guangji asked. Seeing that Uncle Guangji was already extending an olive branch to him, if he still didn't agree, there might never be another chance like this. I'll go. I'll just treat it as going for fun, okay? Xiang Qianjin had thought Uncle Guangji would nod, but instead he shook his head and said, No, that won't do. You think hunting in the mountains is just for fun? If my boy at home hadn't caught a cold, I wouldn't be asking you. Xiang Qianjin actually did want to go into the mountains and look for an opportunity, but a man should be modest. Besides, he really had never hunted before. So as for what to do first, how to arrange things next, and how to wrap things up in the end, he didn't know the first thing about any of it. Then I'll just follow your arrangements, Uncle. What are we planning to catch in the mountains, deer or roe deer? In the mountains of the Greater Xing'an Range, those are the 2 things in least short supply. Who knows? I went into the mountains this morning and set a few animal traps. We'll see tomorrow morning if any dimwits get caught. At the current temperature, whether it's deer or roe deer, once they get caught in a trap, they're as good as dead. but in times when even people have a hard time staying alive, let alone those beasts. Just like that, he agreed to Uncle Guangxi's arrangement. After he left, the family of four continued eating. Uncle Guangxi is trying to make a windfall here. If you're not careful with the things in the mountains, you could lose your life. As soon as Tian Weidong said that, Xiang Meiyun immediately became nervous. Qianjin was the only son in the family. If something happened to him in the mountains, how could that be okay? Qianjin, maybe you'd better not go. It's hard to say what the situation is like in the mountains right now. Xiang Qianjin, however, didn't think much of it and said with a smile, "It's winter, nothing much will happen. Besides, Uncle Guangxi will be there." That afternoon, Xiang Qianjin leaned back against a stack of quilts, holding an enamel tea mug in his hands. The tea inside was still steaming hot. Days like this were comfortable, but they had no future. Tian Weidong was also resting on the Kong, flipping through newspapers and magazines when he had nothing to do, just to kill some boring time. Once winter set in, the days in northeast China grew short. Not long after lunch, it would start getting dark. "Brother-in-law, do you think it'd work if I took what I hunted and sold it at the market? The only investment is time and effort. Once someone pays for it, that's pure profit." Tian Weidong heard a bit of it and said with a smile, "Are there any well-off families around here? If someone wants to eat it, they just go into the mountains themselves." Xiang Qianjin smacked his lips twice and felt his brother-in-law was right. That really was the case. However, once winter comes, people tend to get lazy. Not everyone has that kind of exceptional drive. Anyway, tomorrow he'll follow Uncle Guangxi into the mountains and treat it as an early survey of the future market. The first step in selling things is to look at what customers need and what he is selling. Otherwise, he won't make any money. Once he understands buyers' psychology later on, the seller can supply things in advance. Ideally, buyers should be able to save time and effort with one-stop shopping. If you want to do business, you have to think what customers think and worry what customers worry, so that the people spending money feel a sense of being at home. As he thought about it, the sky grew dark and it was time for dinner again. Seeing his sister busy again for the family's several mouths to feed, Xiang Qianjin pitched in as well. "Sis, tomorrow is market day. If Uncle Guangxi and I make some money selling, is there anything you want? I'll bring it back for you. Do you want a flower hairpin? Or should I buy some cloth for you to make a new outfit?" Xiang Meiyun shook her head. "If you really make money, then bring it home and save it properly. No need to spend it on your sister." But Xiang Qianjin didn't think that way. Wasn't all his running around for the sake of letting his sister and brother-in-law live a good life? Otherwise, why would he put in all this effort? "No, whatever you want, I'll buy it for you tomorrow." For some reason, these words reached Tian Hua's ears. "Uncle, I want a little airplane. Can you buy one for me tomorrow? When I grow up, I want to be an astronaut who flies airplanes." Xiang Qianjin corrected Tian Hua. "The one who flies airplanes is a pilot. An astronaut rides a rocket." Xiang Meiyun thought it over and still didn't know what to buy, since the family lacked nothing. In the end, she still let Xiang Qianjin decide for himself. Not long after they finished dinner that night, Su Guangxi came over wearing a fur coat and holding a rope in his hand. There was also a gleaming meat-cutting knife tucked at his waist. Those who knew understood he was going into the mountains. Those who didn't might think he was about to wipe out an entire family. Going into the mountains to hunt really did require a professional. Xiang Qianjin had thought it was nothing more than getting up early, going into the mountains to check whether the traps had caught deer, roe deer, or something else. He hadn't expected they would have to go into the mountains this early, but thinking about it, it made sense. Catching something takes time, and getting to the market also takes time. Probably even a whole night wouldn't be enough. At night, the temperature in the mountains would only be lower than during the day. Afraid her younger brother would freeze, Xiang Meiyun rummaged through everything and found a fur coat. After putting it on, Xiang Qianjin felt like a standing black bear. But in those days there was no such thing as a down jacket, and if he didn't wear this into the mountains, he really might freeze to death. Then, from who knows where, Xiang Meiyun dug out a Lei Feng hat and pulled it onto her brother's head. "See if anything's still missing?" Xiang Qianjin asked. Su Guangxi looked him over, shook his head, and said, "Nothing's missing. Let's go quickly. I set my traps deep in. It still takes a while to get into the mountains. If we delay any longer, it'll be dawn, and we'll end up getting up before dawn only to arrive late at the market." Urged on by Su Guangxi, Xiang Qianjin set off with him. Walking the night road with a flashlight, the only thing they could see clearly was that tiny patch of ground beneath their feet. "Uncle Guangxi, can the things we hunt be sold for money?" "Of course they can. Just last month I caught a deer, and even the deerskin had buyers. If Xiaohai hadn't spent money on this trip to see the doctor and buy medicine, I wouldn't have suddenly gone into the mountains. Isn't the whole point of looking for this stuff to exchange it for a little money to live on? Hearing Uncle Guangxi say that, Xiang Qianjin knew from his understanding of him that this man was quite simple, honest, and straightforward, not the kind who says one thing and does another behind people's backs. Then, Uncle, I don't want any money. I'll just lend a hand. Could you teach me how to hunt? Su Guangxi stared at Xiang Qianjin for quite a while, then said with a smile, You brat, are you treating this money as tuition? All right, if I can teach you, then this skill of mine won't have gone to waste. Xiang Qianjin felt the tuition was worth it. The wildlife protection law was promulgated in '89, and right now it's '83, so at most there's still 5 or 6 years left. He could make his first pot of gold off the wild animals in the mountains. Rich people just like to eat exotic things, especially wealthy people in big cities. If some small restaurant could offer rare items, those people would come sniffing it out like they had dogs' noses. But rare things aren't easy to hunt, and some of them hibernate. So they'd have to wait until spring next year for a chance to try. Just getting into and out of the mountains took 2 hours, and on top of that, Su Guangxi still had to find where he had set his animal traps. Before long, Xiang Qianjin started sniffling and yawning. Being sleepy was one thing, being cold was another. He suddenly began to miss that not-so-warm bed. Judging from Su Guangxi's movements, this clearly wasn't his first time entering the mountains. Xiang Qianjin followed right behind him, stepping into his footprints with every step. Qianjin, shine the flashlight over there. I remember there's a trap around here. Holding the flashlight in his hand, Xiang Qianjin followed the direction Uncle Guangxi pointed and shone it to the left. He watched as Guangxi shuffled a few steps in that direction, bulky yet nimble. Uncle, can you see clearly? Should I take a couple more steps forward? It was just an ordinary flashlight, so there was no point expecting much brightness. And Xiang Qianjin worried Uncle Guangxi might not be able to see clearly and end up in some kind of accident. Su Guangxi waved his hand. No need. There's another one nearby. Once I find it, you can come over. You brat, if you go wandering around, your foot might get caught too. Xiang Qianjin gave an "oh" and stood still where he was. When Su Guangxi found an empty trap, he let out a sigh. In winter, even living creatures don't want to come out, and there are even fewer out foraging. After laying them out for most of the day, he still hadn't caught anything. But these animal traps couldn't just stay here forever. What if someone went into the mountains and stepped on one? Wouldn't that be a sin? So when necessary, they still had to put the animal traps away. He had only set out a few. But after Su Guangxi collected 2 traps in a row, his heart sank to the bottom. It seemed that hunting became hard in winter too. They went a bit deeper and ended up collecting 4 traps altogether. Seeing that there wasn't even a trace of anything, Xiang Qianjin also felt somewhat disappointed. Uncle Guangxi, was it the wrong time for us to come? Su Guangxi stood there sighing, probably unwilling to accept this fact. But maybe if they walked a little farther, things would take a turn for the better. They went a bit farther, but still didn't hear any movement. And Su Guangxi had already given up all hope. Who would have thought that when Xiang Qianjin shone his flashlight, he saw a pitch-black thing lying not far away? Uncle Guangxi, do you think that's a roe deer? Su Guangxi looked over along the beam of light and slapped his thigh. It really is. Quick, hurry over. When they went up, they found that one of the roe deer's legs was clamped tightly in the animal trap. A large patch of blood had flowed out. If they had come a little later, it probably really would have breathed its last. They had come into the mountains to hunt in the first place, and the roe deer was simply unlucky. This was Xiang Qianjin's first time doing something like this. As the old saying goes, a gentleman stays away from the kitchen. Seeing a fresh living creature slowly fading away right before his eyes, Xiang Qianjin truly didn't feel good about it. By contrast, though, Su Guangxi was much calmer. He had slaughtered these kinds of things plenty of times before, and besides, while the thing was still alive, they could let it bleed. Otherwise, he wouldn't have called Xiang Qianjin over. No one knew how long this roe deer had been lying here. It no longer had the strength to struggle, just symbolically kicked its legs a couple of times, then gave up. They tied the roe deer's 4 hooves with rope. Then Su Guangxi drew his knife and skillfully found the spot to let the blood. Xiang Qianjin just watched like that, and only let go once the roe deer stopped breathing. When Su Guangxi saw that the roe deer had completely breathed its last, he told Xiang Qianjin to lend a hand. They found a thicker branch nearby, and the 2 of them worked together to carry the roe deer out. I told you my trap wasn't set for nothing. Catching something like this can still bring in some money. As long as we don't leave empty-handed, it's a profit no matter what. By the time they carried this silly roe deer out of the mountain, it was almost daybreak. The 2 of them then agreed to go to the market together. They didn't even go home and headed straight for the market. By the time they arrived, there were already a few stalls there, selling mostly things brought back from the mountains. None of it was sold in the commune. There weren't many people strolling around the market, but it didn't take long for someone to notice what the two of them had brought, especially Su Guangji, who somehow found a board and gave an impromptu meat-cutting demonstration on the spot. In those days, no matter what it was, it could fetch some money. Before long, people had gathered around the stall. Xiang Qianjin couldn't just stand there watching, so he separated the freshly cut meat into pile after pile. He weighed them in his hand to estimate how heavy they were, so he could figure out what price to sell them for. Roe deer meat isn't very tasty. It's tough and dry, and if you want it to taste good, you have to use heavy seasoning. There were always one or two relatively well-off families in a village. That little bit of meat ration coupons wasn't enough to satisfy their craving, so getting some roe deer meat for a treat was still pretty good. How much are you selling it for? Someone in the crowd asked. Xiang Qianjin was just about to say 2 yuan per pile of meat. That was already a very fair price. He and Uncle Guangji had gone into the mountains to hunt and carried it here from so far away. Most importantly, it was fresh. This roe deer wasn't very big, and the meat cut from it should taste better than meat from a grown roe deer. Pork cost more than 2 yuan a jin now, and this roe deer had only been obtained after so much effort. Yet he was only selling it for 2 yuan, which was already at a loss. And that pile of meat had to weigh more than a jin at least. It was practically an act of great charity at the market. He had thought no one would buy it at that price, but instead people were pulling out money and scrambling to get some. It was clear that these people fighting to buy meat had been craving meat so badly they were desperate. Su Guangji gave Xiang Qianjin a look, telling him to collect money while selling the meat. In the blink of an eye, all the cut meat was sold out, and Xiang Qianjin was clutching a thick stack of small denomination bills in his hand. He thought how great it would be if these were all big unity notes. Then he'd be rich. Unfortunately, they were all old bills worth a few mao and a few fun. People may be good or bad, but money has no rank. As long as it was money, Xiang Qianjin liked it all. By rough estimate, this roe deer probably weighed only 20 or 30 jin. Su Guangji trimmed the meat right against the bone, unwilling to waste even a bit. Slaughtering was also a skill. Su Guangji brandished the knife in his hand, and in the blink of an eye the skin and flesh were separated from the bones. There were still a few scraps of meat left on the bones when someone suddenly shouted, "I'll take the skeleton." Before Xiang Qianjin could respond, someone else shouted, "I want the roe deer hide." Xiang Qianjin could roughly estimate the price of the meat, but when it came to how much to charge for the skeleton and the hide, he was completely at a loss. If he set the price too low, all their work would be for nothing. If he asked too much, no one would want to buy. Exactly how much it should sell for depended on Uncle Guangji. The hide isn't in very good condition. If you want it, make it 5 yuan. There isn't much meat left on the bones. 8 yuan, and it's all yours. Hearing this price, Xiang Qianjin sucked in a cold breath. In those days, a worker's wage was only a few dozen yuan. Isn't that price a bit high? Sure enough, after hearing the price, the two people who had just been shouting that they wanted them became somewhat hesitant. Xiang Qianjin had just wanted to say, "If you don't want it, does anyone else?" When he noticed Uncle Guangji's calm and composed expression, he didn't seem worried at all that no one would buy the stuff. Sure enough, after things had only quieted down for a short while, someone pulled out money. "If they don't want it, give it all to me. Here's 13 yuan, count it." Just as Xiang Qianjin took the money, he heard the distinctive bell of a 28-inch bicycle. A single roe deer had been completely divided up in less than half an hour. Those who had been hesitating over whether to buy it finally saw they had no chance to make a move and left in frustration. Only the one who had taken everything, bones and hide included, was still standing there. Once the crowd dispersed, the view opened up, and only then did Xiang Qianjin notice that the people who had come were wearing peaked caps. Watching them walk toward him, Xiang Qianjin felt somewhat nervous. Could they be here to confiscate it? The city management officers loved doing this sort of thing. Su Guangji deftly chopped up the bones and neatly folded the whole skinned hide as well. Before the city management officers could come over, he handed the things to the customer. The customer didn't want to waste his money either. He glanced back once, said nothing, then hugged the things and quickly left. Xiang Qianjin hid the money he had stuffed into his pocket, though doing so was a bit like covering his ears while stealing a bell. But if he could play it slick and get by, wouldn't that save trouble? "That's all gone?" asked Lu Jun, the captain of the city management team. "Gone. This time the one we caught wasn't very big, a little over a jin per person, so it sold out quickly," Su Guangji said. Only then did Xiang Qianjin realize. So these peaked cap people also wanted to buy some roe deer meat. Next time, Next time we go into the mountains, we'll try to find a bigger one. Tell us in advance how much you want, and we'll set it aside." Lu Jun thought for a moment and said, 2 or 3 Jin will do. "When are you going into the mountains again?" From Lu Jun's tone, it wasn't hard to tell that he was rather anxious. But there really wasn't any extra roe deer meat now. Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. However, Xiang Qianjin was already quite shrewd. Lu Jun's status was that of captain of the city management team. He had a say throughout this whole area, and building a good relationship with him would make everything more convenient in the future. "Captain Lu, we'll definitely save some for you next time. We're really sorry about this time." Lu Jun wasn't an unreasonable person either. This kind of thing depended on luck to begin with. It just happened that he was out of luck today. "Fine, then it's settled. Next time you catch one, be sure to save some for me." Lu Jun pushed his 28-inch bicycle away, and Xiang Qianjin also took out the money earned from selling the meat and handed it to Su Guangji. "Uncle Guangji, count it." Su Guangji didn't stand on ceremony either. After all that effort, wasn't it all for this bit of money? If it came up short by even 50 cents or a yuan, it would be a painful loss. After counting it out dime by dime, Su Guangji nodded in satisfaction and pulled out 2 or 3 bills from it to give to Xiang Qianjin. "Here, you worked with me all night. How could I really not give you any money?" Su Guangji stuffed 5 yuan into Xiang Qianjin's hand. "Uncle, this is..." Xiang Qianjin exclaimed. 5 yuan was already quite a lot, enough to buy many things. If used sparingly, it could last 10 days or so. "Qianjin, I still have to go buy some medicine for my son, so I won't be heading back with you." Xiang Qianjin understood and asked with concern whether Su Guangji needed him to come along. After getting a negative answer, Xiang Qianjin headed home alone. After walking for an hour and seeing that he was almost home, he felt the 5 yuan in his pocket and got an idea. He turned and went to the commune. His older sister had always been a good woman who was diligent and thrifty in managing the household, never daring to spend much on herself. Sometimes he really envied his brother-in-law for being able to marry his sister. The last time she bought cloth to make clothes was 2 years ago. Even though life in the 80s was 4 or 5 decades in the past, Xiang Qianjin still remembered from beginning to end the time he stayed and ate at his sister and brother-in-law's home. If it weren't for the two of them, his very survival would have been a problem. Today he earned 5 yuan by following Su Guangji. He had to buy something for his sister, otherwise his conscience would be uneasy. There weren't many people at the commune today. Looking at the dazzling array of goods, a large portion of them didn't hold much appeal for Xiang Qianjin. Only the rolls of various floral fabrics displayed inside the counter caught his eye. He said he wanted to buy a piece of cloth to take back so his sister could make a new outfit. But which fabric would be best for making clothes? He definitely couldn't afford satin. It was too expensive. More ordinary options were pure cotton or the new synthetic fabric, polyester. As for making clothes, Xiang Qianjin had never really put much thought into it. It had always been his mother who thought about such things. Besides, he wasn't growing any taller now anyway. As long as his clothes weren't worn out and he didn't suddenly turn fat overnight, he could keep wearing them. "Hello, could you take the red fabric with small white flowers behind you and let me have a look?" Xiang Qianjin asked. The staff member behind the counter smiled and nodded, bringing that roll of red floral fabric in front of Xiang Qianjin. The cloth felt quite thick, the quality was good, and the tiny floral pattern was pretty too. Whether it was made into a cotton padded jacket or a summer dress, or even just an ordinary blouse, it would work. "How much is this fabric per chi?" "This fabric is pure cotton. 1 chi is 0.15 yuan. How much do you want? Or rather, what are you planning to make? A cotton padded jacket or a blouse? Or maybe pants? How tall is the person who will wear it? How heavy or thin are they? Describe them to me, and I'll help you estimate it." Xiang Qianjin thought that winter had only just begun, and there were still several cold months ahead. If this were made into a floral skirt, it'd have to be put away for now. Better to make a jacket instead, a floral cotton padded jacket, so when the new year comes, his sister could celebrate wearing a new padded jacket too. Xiang Qianjin told the staff member what he needed, and the staff member then asked him for the other person's height and build. Then they cut a piece of fabric for him, folded it neatly, then wrapped it in yellow oilcloth paper. They also tied it up with hemp string, winding it twice in a crisscross pattern. "Do you want cotton padding? And do you have needle and thread at home? If you don't mind, we can help make it here, but we'll charge a 0.5 yuan labor fee. Do you think that's acceptable?" Xiang Qianjin shook his head. Why waste money on that? His sister knew how to make clothes. Then he bought some pretty buttons at another counter, and only then did Xiang Qianjin head home fully satisfied. As soon as he walked in, he saw his sister sitting on the Kong sewing something. One look at the garment told Xiang Qianjin It was the cotton-padded jacket his sister had already been wearing for 4 or 5 years. The cuffs had worn down from years of use, and who knew how many times they had been patched up. At the elbows, there was even a patch in a completely different color. Xiang Qianjin walked up to Xiang Meiyun. "Sis, stop sewing for now. I bought you something nice." Xiang Meiyun looked up and noticed what her younger brother was carrying in his hand.